What's up, guys? Wanted to come to you and talk to you about why I think that DC is better than Marvel. So, I know I just started like a huge discussion, and I know that there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with me, assuming a lot of people watch the video. But I know there's a lot of people who disagree with me, and I get in this argument all the time. They're like, "Oh no, Marvel's way better than DC." I'm like, no, DC's way better. And I'll give you, I love Marvel. I like the characters in Marvel. I like it all. Um, I love superheroes. But if I had to choose which one I would go for, it would be DC all the way. And respectfully, everybody's entitled to their opinion. So if you love Marvel and hate DC, or you like Marvel better and all your favorite characters are Marvel, whatever. I have favorite characters from both, but I think DC's better. So, and here's why. I think the characters are more interesting. I think that they've got more renown than Marvel heroes do. Honestly, like a lot of the Marvel heroes haven't been popular until recently. Um, and so outside of like comic book world, um, whereas DC like has killed it forever. Like so before like the 2000s, nobody had ever heard of Iron Man. Nobody had really ever heard of Thor. So, a lot of the nerds were super excited when Iron Man showed up. They're like, "What? What is going on here?" They're like, "Avengers is coming." Uh, cause, but nobody else knew. They're like, "What is Iron Man?" Like, maybe some people had heard of him, but now when Captain America came out, most people had heard of Captain America. 'Cause he's been a pretty popular figure for a long time. But other than that, like, and the Hulk. I mean, most people had heard of the Hulk, like, because he's been in TV, he's been in movies, forever. And nobody had ever really heard of Thor. Like, I had people who were like, what is this movie? Like, who's Thor? I was like, oh, he's a Greek god, or a Norse god. They're like, oh, well, we knew that, but what is the movie? Like, oh, he's a superhero, he's in the Avengers. So nobody had really heard of the Avengers. I know that comic book fans are gonna be like, "Oh, the Avengers is a huge deal," and it is. It is like, you have Avengers, West Coast Avengers, you have all that kind of stuff. You have, Hawkeye, you have Black Widow. All those characters are really great. Nick Fury, Agents of Shield, all that stuff is really cool. But most people have never really heard of the Avengers. Maybe knew, like, they're like, that sounds familiar, but I mean, really, we hadn't really had a lot of experience with them. The mainstays of Marvel have always been, until recently, the X-Men, which is their biggest hit that never dies. It's always popular. It's always popular. Spider-Man has never not been popular. Let's just say that. Spider-Man, there are people who will always buy Spider-Man. But everybody knows who Spider-Man is. Like, he's been around forever. And not that the Avengers haven't, but they were never as popular. Spider-Man, huge success. One of the best superheroes ever made. And then you have the Fantastic Four, and they've been around forever. One of the first teams. But Fantastic Four really aren't that popular outside the comic book world. But still, like, the mainstays of DC were Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, and X-Men. And they were all really good. Really great characters. I like the Avengers. I like the Guardians of the Galaxy. But even the Fantastic Four, probably got stolen from the Challengers from DC. It's interesting how much DC and Marvel steal from each other, borrow, um, and I don't mind that. I don't mind that. Yeah, but characters like Deadpool, nobody really knew who Deadpool was unless you were a die-hard comic book fan until the movie came. Now everybody loves Deadpool, and Guardians of the Galaxy, like that's not even the original crew. Like they're very recent, considering, and I mean it's amazing. The movies are great, uh, but it's not like it's super recent. And honestly, the comic books aren't even that great these days. So it's just like a lot of these heroes that you love are really awesome because Marvel really has the TV or the movies down pat, and they're great. Um, but most people have never heard of these characters before, so it's just like whatever. I don't even know if like Wolverine was really that more of like I think feel like he was more of a niche character where he was like in this he had a huge cult following, but I don't think he was ever like the main character of the X-Men. Um, I mean maybe eventually, but if anything he's like I think he's an anti-hero too. He's not even like the real hero. Cyclops is like the leader of the X-Men. Which is why he and Wolverine are always fighting. But anyways, that's beside the point. So you have all these characters that everybody loves now because they've seen all the movies. But before the movies, like nobody had ever heard of them. Like Iron Man was probably like a B-lister at best until the Iron Man movie came out, and now he's one of the most popular heroes of all time. And I don't think he's really that interesting. Overall. Captain America's way better. The Hulk is much more interesting. Batman's way more interesting. I don't even care for Batman in a general sense. I like Batman. I just prefer Robin. Anyways, so like a lot of these heroes, nobody ever heard of them until the movies came out. DC like they've been around for a long time. They've had movies out for a long time, much longer than Marvel. And obviously that doesn't necessarily make it better, but as far as cultural impact, like Batman has a huge cultural impact because he's been around forever. So is Superman. Superman is the first superhero. So it's just like, you have Batman, you have Superman, and you have Wonder Woman. There's a reason we call them the Trinity, because they are three of, if not the greatest superheroes ever made. They were excellent, and they still are. They're still written well. People love them. They've been around forever, and they are probably the most well-known superheroes of all time. Up until maybe the last 20 years. But still, everybody knew who Batman was. Everybody knows who Superman was. Everybody knows who Wonder Woman was. You're like, oh, well, everybody knew the mainstays of Marvel, too. I was like, well, okay. Most people know who Aquaman is. I think he's a joke. But most people know who he is. They've known him for a long time, and he's never gotten his own movie. He's gotten Super Friends, but everybody knows who Robin is. He's never had his own movie. Everybody knows. They might not know that there's multiple Robins. But a lot of people have heard of Nightwing and Red Hood. A lot of people, even though they've never gotten their own movie. A lot of people have heard of Batgirl. Why? Because of the old TV shows a long time ago. They were side characters. Everybody knows the Joker. Joker is the most important villain of all time, I think, in superheroes. I'm gonna go with Darth Vader as the best, but he's the most iconic Joker is of superheroes ever. And So you have the most iconic heroes, you have the most iconic villains. I mean, who doesn't know the Riddler or the Penguin or Doomsday? Um, these characters have been around for a long time, maybe more than Doomsday Lex Luthor. Like Superman and Lex Luthor, everybody knows who the you say those. Everybody knows who they are. They are iconic. They're huge characters that have been around forever. Like most people don't know the X-Men villains. Magneto. He's sort of a villain, sort of anti-hero, more villain, but so everybody knows Magneto. But what are some of the others? Yeah, like there's. But if you're a big comic book fan, you're like, oh well, I can just name all these. But otherwise, like, nobody knows. Like Apocalypse came out recently, but Deadpool, he was a villain. I think he is still a villain. Like some of these characters, you don't really know who their villains are. The Fantastic Four, you might know Galactus and Doctor Doom. But Doctor Doom deserves to be known because he's awesome. But what are some other Fantastic Four villains? Like I don't even know a bunch of them. Galactus and Doctor Doom are about the only ones I can name off the top of my head right now. But yeah, like the villains are better. Now I will say like Wonder Woman's villains are a little bit more difficult to remember. Obviously Cheetah, but that's beside the point. And of course we know Ares, but you might say that's just because of the movie. Really, you can say any like Greek or Roman god, and she probably has fought that person at some point. And then what else you got? You got the Flash, Gorilla Grodd. Everybody knows the Reverse Flash. Some people might not have known Gorilla Grodd until the Flash TV show, but everybody knows the Reverse Flash, and you might not know that there's multiple Reverse Flashes, even though they don't technically go by that name, but his yellow costume as Reverse Flash is very iconic. I think a lot of people might know who Starro is, just because it's funny that he was the first Justice League villain. And Justice League has always been a mainstay of DC. But what really gets DC, I think, the edge is that they have legacy characters that are just as good, if not better, in my opinion, than the originals. The Titans and the Teen Titans are awesome. Awesome. I love them. My favorite character is Robin. It's a tie between Dick Grayson and Tim Drake. And both of them have been on the Teen Titans. Dick Grayson has led the Titans, and all of those characters are really great. All their sidekicks. Most of the heroes in Marvel don't really have sidekicks, which I don't mind them not having sidekicks. I just think it's really more interesting when you have like this legacy hero. Yeah, I mean Captain America had Bucky Barnes, and he does become Captain America at some point. Just like Dick Grayson becomes Batman at some point, and I think all the Robins have become Batman at one point or another. But yeah, I think it's interesting that you see these characters grow. The Flash, you had Jay Garrick come first, and then he was superseded by Barry Allen. Now, everybody knows who Barry Allen is, but then he was superseded by Wally West. And for a long time, the Flash that everybody grew up with was Wally West. And unfortunately, Bart Allen hasn't quite gotten there yet. I'd love to see him get there, but DC's kind of got a bromance with Barry Allen for some reason. And I like Barry Allen. I just think Wally West and Bart Allen are way more interesting. But you have these mantles that are passed down, and it just like feels like it's so special because you're like, oh, like it'd be cool like if I could get that mantle, like, and so there's this sense in DC where you're just like this mantle could be passed to me in a sense, like you're identifying with these younger heroes who grow up into their their former I keep wanting to say master. That's not the master. Their instructor, their teacher, their mentor. Mentor is the word I was looking for. They grow in and become greater than their mentor. That's why Wally West, the original one, is way better than Barry, because he grew up under the tutelage of Barry Allen. He learned how to be the Flash. He learned how to struggle with the powers from a young age. And then when he becomes the Flash, he's had all these years of experience where Barry had this trial and error. He had his trial and error underneath Barry Allen. And then just his struggle with Barry after he dies, Barry's death, like that just really wrecks him. And we talk about that in my video that I had with my first superhero chat with Lewis about why Wally is more interesting than Barry. And so we see something similar with Green Lantern. Most people have heard of Green Lantern. Why? It's a very popular character, really interesting. And I'm not saying that Marvel's not interesting. I like all the characters in Marvel, mostly. But again, you have these legacy characters. You had Alan Scott. He was the first Green Lantern. Most people don't know who he is. Why? Because the person doesn't matter as much as the title. Then you have the Green Lantern. You have Hal Jordan. Now, most people know who Hal Jordan is because he's considered the greatest Green Lantern of all time. Then you had John Stewart, who is amazing. And if you've seen that Justice League cartoon that I'm always talking about, beautiful, beautiful. And he's finally back in the Justice League again. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. He takes up the mantle. And it's just like it was before, the Green Lantern, just with new stories, new exciting stories. And then you have him leave, and who is it? Guy Gardner, and you're like, oh no, like this guy's awful, like he's not anything like the Green Lanterns before. And then he leaves, and Kyle Rayner shows up, and he's very, very different. And so you can have the title have growth and interestingness. Yeah, that's the word I'm going with. Interestingness. A depth of characters, because you can change the character. Captain America will always be Captain America. I know I'm saying that with Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman will always be them, but all the other characters have passed their mantle, can pass mantles down. Robin, there's been 4 important Robins and 2 others which are pretty interesting. Batgirl, there's been several Batgirls. There's only been one Nightwing, but that's because he became his own hero. He didn't have anybody behind him yet. It would be interesting if Dick Grayson ended up tutelaging somebody outside of the Batman role, because when he was Batman, he taught Damian, but I'd like to see him. Like, he's an adult now. It'd be interesting if he found a young hero to follow, and he struggled with that because he wants to teach this kid better than he was taught. And then he makes his own mistakes and overreacting to Batman and trying not to be like Batman. Anyways, so that'd be interesting. DC do that. But all these other characters have done that. Aquaman obviously can't do that. But DC has a lot of these characters that can pass on mantles. And honestly, there's been different Supermans. There's been different Batmans. There's a bunch. I think all of the Robins have been Batman at some time. Azrael has been Batman at a time. And of course we have Batman Beyond, which is awesome. Terry McGinnis. Amazing. It's really good. And so it's just like all these heroes pass down mantles, and it just really builds like this giant universe where you have all these different characters who have lived up to like the name, and that's really awesome. And I like Marvel. I just don't feel like when Bucky Barnes becomes Captain America, I think that's really awesome. But then, eventually Captain is back, and he's Captain America. And then what? Who's Bucky Barnes? He's the Winter Soldier. Falcon it becomes Captain America, but he leaves too. I think Bucky Barnes really should deserve it because he's the kid who followed with Steve Rogers. Falcon's a fun Captain America. I just wish he would be like himself. Like, I feel like when he was Captain America, he was trying too hard to be Captain America and not be his own person. And I didn't like that. We've had a couple Thors, but really Thor is Thor. And then we've had a couple Hulks, and I think it's interesting that there's a Hulk family, but Hulk will always be Hulk. Bruce Banner is always Hulk. You might have, his cousin become She-Hulk, but she's She-Hulk. You have Amadeus who became Hulk, and that was okay. It wasn't that great. But Hulk is always Hulk. Iron Man, he hasn't passed on a mantle. Why? Because he clings to it too hard. I think that's interesting, but it doesn't really give you a lot of depth. Now, Guardians of the Galaxy has been a lot of different people. The Defenders have been a lot of different people. So if they worked on that with the ties, it'd be a lot more interesting, a lot more in depth that we could enjoy. But unfortunately, and I think DC has this a lot lately, maybe the last 20 years, both franchises have not liked to move on. And I love classic characters. So I'm not saying don't write anything for the classic characters. But at the same time, if you don't create all these new characters, like, your stories are never going to get any better. Another one, Daredevil, always Daredevil. Matt Murdock. Luke Cage is always going to be Luke Cage. Jessica Jones is always going to be Jessica Jones. Iron Fist can change, but they haven't done it. Like, Danny Rand's been Iron Fist forever. And I love Danny Rand, so don't get me wrong on that. But I'd be interested to see, like, what would happen if a new Iron Fist showed up. So that'd be pretty cool. Spider-Man. Miles Morales is one of the best things that's ever happened to Spider-Man. Spider-Gwen, one of the best things that happened to Spider-Man. The Spider-Verse is amazing. I love it. I love the Spider multiverse thing. It's so great. Miles Morales is probably my favorite Spider-Man. I like him way better than Peter Parker. I love Peter Parker, but I feel like Spider-Man is just way better. I mean, Miles Morales, I think he's way more interesting because he has to live in a world without Peter Parker, where Peter Parker has died in the service. And I think that when you kill off a hero in such a great way, to bring them back is really just cheapening their death sometimes. Sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's not. Like Barry Allen, I think it was okay for him to come back. I just wish he had left the mantle to Wally. Because once you give, like, the mantle up, it really needs to stay in with somebody else. So, like, with the Green Lanterns, now the Green Lanterns of Earth is no longer Kyle because he gave it to Simon Bias. And then Hal Jordan also included Jessica Cruz. So we have like a 2 dynamic duo. It's great. It's really excellent. And those characters are amazing. If you're not reading Green Lanterns, you really need to, because it's excellent. It's excellent. Hal Jordan, the Green Lanterns, gives you a little bit of the old style. You get to all the old characters that you love. And then Green Lanterns gives you all the new characters that you love. It's perfect. That's how comics should be. Give us a little bit of the old stuff that we love. Give us a lot of the new stuff that we love. Bring it all together. Mix it up. It's great. So we want both. I want the old stuff and I want the new stuff. Like, give us both. And but before the movies came out, like, most people would say that Batman was their favorite superhero, or Superman was their favorite superhero, or Wonder Woman. like maybe you to get a few Flashes or Green Lanterns or Green Arrow, who's become more popular since the 90s. And uh, you know, some people might say more of the random characters like X-Men or whatnot, but really before the 2000s, nobody really would say Marvel. And I love that Marvel's coming back and that they're making really great movies. I wish they'd make better comic books, but you know, overall, DC has a richer history. They're not afraid to move on and change the right things, and I think that's great. I think it's reward. Plus, they have the most iconic characters, the greatest characters of all time, the greatest villains of all time. Um, it's great. So, and let's just say everyone's like, oh well, Marvel has DC as Thanos, but DC has Darkseid, the original Thanos, like not the one that was copied off the other one, which is what Marvel has, the copy. I like Thanos. Don't get me wrong. Infinity War is the best Marvel movie yet, hands down. Some people might fight me with that. Bring it on. It's the best. But Darkseid's better. Darkseid is way more interesting than Thanos is. He's a mad titan. He has like a kind of one idea that he wants to go after death. Yeah, it's cool. I enjoyed that. You know, it's a fun story. But Darkseid is so in depth, so in depth. Another I like is Trigon. That's really interesting with Raven. Which, you know, another good thing is that the next generation became equally as popular as the Justice League. Everybody knows the Teen Titans. And you have Young Justice, and you have Titans, and all these characters that have been formed together as original sidekicks and legacy characters have become just as popular as the Justice League itself, which is crazy. You know, all the side characters of the Avengers have never really been as popular as the Avengers. There's a reason why. Well, Hawkeye did lead the West Coast Avengers. But there's very little movement up and down in DC. I mean, in Marvel, where characters would become A-listers or B-listers or C-listers or lower. Most characters end up in a spot and they never really move. Now, once the movies came out, that changed the game. But overall, most of those characters don't jump up and down. DC, there's all sorts of heroes that go up and down the ladder. Like some decades, Green Arrow is way up on the list. Some arrows he's way down on the list, and like Supergirl's up there now, and the Flash is back to being an A-lister. I mean, I think he was an A-lister, but you know, he was probably had dropped down to a B before the Flash TV series had come out. Just getting overshadowed by other characters, but anyways, but there's movement on the scale. You know, some characters that people hate. I hate Damian Wayne, but he's moving up in my book. Like, he's getting better because of interesting stories and writing, and there's a lot more movement up and down that scale in DC than there's Marvel. Anyways, I've rambled on a long time, probably longer than you wanted to hear, but I really love DC. I love the characters. I'm very invested in DC. I love Marvel a lot more than I usually say. But I really love the DC characters. Now, I know there's a lot of people who are gonna fight back on that. You know, that's fine. You know, everybody has their opinion. It's kind of like the MJ versus LeBron. I mean, MJ's obviously the GOAT, but you know, just like I say, DC's obviously the best. But I enjoy the conversation, and isn't that the greatest thing anyways, that we can have conversations about superheroes in general. So let me know what you think. Do you like Marvel better? Do you think my arguments are awful and that I'm pretty much the worst human ever because I think DC's better than Marvel? Or do you agree? Like, do you like DC and say that Marvel is way worse and that all the characters in DC are 100 times better than Marvel. Let me know what you think. I'd love to talk about it. I love those characters. And anyways, catch you next time. Peace.